Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon did all they needed to do yesterday during the combine presser, and the NFLPA team grades are out. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. So I went from having a full combine presser podcast to unveil to you to really condensing that down to one chunky segment in the first segment. And then, the NFLPA team grades came out a little bit earlier than I thought. I was going to do those tomorrow, but you will get a second segment of those today. And I'll expound upon it a little bit more tomorrow as, the actual grading of these things are pretty in depth as to why, specific grades were swayed one way or the other, how they're weighted. And while none of this matters in the true grand scheme of things for most teams, I think it matters for the Cardinals, especially with whatever the opposite of a rave review they got last year with 5 Fs, including 3 F minuses, I think, even though that's a figment of somebody's imagination and on the grading scale. The actual grades they got this year were kind of the personification of this season as a whole. And I'll explain more in depth. Plus, Mel Kiper has his new mock draft out, and I'll discuss that in the final segment. But, I talked yesterday discussing what Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon needed to do in an effort to just knock it out of the park with the presser. And while these things seem small and trivial for most organizations, these things are pivotal for the Arizona Cardinals moving forward, okay? Because Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon are doing something that is a very tall task, pretty much bringing an organization out of the doldrums and pivoting them to be in a position to succeed for more than one or two years at a time. And yesterday they said some interesting things, and I'm glad that I'm really only doing one segment on this because it's more going back to the abstract here, where both of them showed up comfortable themselves, answered the questions, didn't give away too much, didn't tell anybody who they were drafting it for, like Steve Kyman and Cliff Kingsbury did a couple years back in 2019 when they pretty much told everybody they were drafting Kyler Murray at number 1. They were poignant with their answers. They both spoke from the same mouth pretty much, which was great, even though JG said a couple times, this is Monty's gig, but these are the things that we've discussed. And they talked, they were asked questions about all kinds of things. Obviously, first off with Kyler Murray, Jonathan Gannon, the quote is, the game goes through number 1. I mean, here's the thing. I've seen so many segments on national media TV shows talking about the Arizona Cardinals posting that picture of Kyler Murray saying he's their guy after the NFL rumors report came out that they were looking at Bo Nix. That shows the laziness and out of touchness. I make up words sometimes here. I don't care. About the national media as pertaining to the Arizona Cardinals. It's lazy. It's a segment. It's clickbait. And then they move on. The fact that they have to pepper in the Arizona Cardinals, they probably don't even want to do that because there's so many other things. They could talk about the Cowboys for 2.5 hours. But it's lazy. Okay? If anybody thinks that Kyler Murray is not the guy for this team, in the minds of Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon, you're wrong. I'm sorry, but you're wrong. We don't know what's going to happen next year, but this year, and the reason why they took this job, a large portion of it was because Kyler Murray was the quarterback. So that's the first thing. One of the great quotes after watching the presser Jonathan Gannon said, what are you looking for in guys? What are you looking for in the combine? His quote was, seeing if they love ball and if they're team guys. So this is they're trying to build a culture, a family here. And again, listen, I know that a lot of these things seem very obvious. A lot of these things seem very, well, that's how you're supposed to do it. Why are you giving these guys credit for things that are very obvious and very simple to say? This is where the comparisons kind of come into play. I've discussed all offseason, all 2023 season, that even if the last regime was the best in the history of football, you'd still give Jonathan Gannon and Monti Ossenfort credit for what they did this offseason with what was handed to them. Now, with the presser and how they do things in public-facing things, you can't help but compare what it was to what it is now. And both of these guys said the right things because that's how they're building this team from the ground all the way up. Monti Ossenfort, one of the interesting things that he talked about was Clayton Tune. He was asked about Clayton Tune by one of our local reporters here, and that kind of surprised me. They're going to give him every opportunity to be QB2. And then mentioned, maybe in a very outside chance of bringing in a veteran to back him up. Like, how Monti Ossenfort spends his $51 million is going to be fascinating because I have no idea. We have no idea what's going to happen. L'Jarius Sneed got franchise tagged this morning. So all of the big names, and this isn't surprising, but all of the big names are either getting tagged or in conversations already for contract extensions. And sure, the tag window, to be able to hang on to that player in an effort to build out a long-term extension is right now. So, like, all of the big names, Jalen Johnson, Justin Madubuike, L'Jarius Sneed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with free agency. But with Monti Ossenfort and the conversations that they had, with Jonathan Gannon and the answers that they gave, it's very clear that there are a couple things that are no-brainers for them. Kyler Murray's the guy. They like to build through the draft if they can, which is something I've discussed here. And I know that I got comments where it's like, oh, you don't build through a free agency, you build through the draft. No. Complementary pieces throughout free agency are paramount for a team that is so young like the Cardinals and is only going to get younger with this new draft class that comes in. Obviously, you always want to build through the draft. It's the most economically friendly for a team. It's the way to build a culture and a cohesion. If you're watching guys from rookies on to their second contract to stay with the Cardinals, that's the dream. And that allows you to go out and spend some more money on free agents because, the rookie scale contracts are so team friendly. But the things that were glaring through Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon's presser yesterday, Kyler Murray's the guy. Build through the draft, looking for team first guys. And the fascinating part, another name like Hollywood Brown, I'm mentioned Hollywood Brown, JG said that he, paraphrasing, he said he talks with Kyler, about everything, but also talk, with Hollywood Brown, etc. I'm not against bringing Hollywood Brown for a 1 year, $3 million deal or 1 year, $4 million deal. I'm assuming he'll get more money elsewhere on the open market, but if he wants to stay, he wants a proven deal, why not? Why not? But overall, what I discussed yesterday that you'd hope to see during their press conferences, what they showed a unified front. They belong there and be themselves and give actual answers and not just the combine version of, I'll watch the tape. And they did that. And there have been glowing reviews from players at the combine after meeting with the Arizona Cardinals. So listen, this is not the old Arizona Cardinals. And I know that needs to be proven before people start to believe, but these things are being done differently from the beginning. And you can't help but think future pacing wins will come because of that. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Alex Clancy here. The 2024 NFLPA team grades are out. I mean, it's not 5 Fs, so that's a win. We'll discuss that next as we're all on here, Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. We're in full swing, man, with the NBA. March Madness is right around the corner. Are you kidding me? There's March Madness is less than a month away. So you got NBA that'll lead you up to that. Got March Madness. I mean, FanDuel's got you covered for all of it. The live same game parlays are awesome. Say, Jason Tatum doesn't have a great first half, so his number for his total is a little bit lower with points. You can hit that. You can parlay that with, his rebounds. If he has more rebounds than you expect in the first half, you can do it all over at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is also brought to you by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our time wishing we had more time, throughout your life. You're you wishing you had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? With me, I whenever I discuss BetterHelp, I work 16-hour days. I'd like to have maybe more time to have a social life, but it's when you've got goals and you want to become great, sometimes things fall by the wayside, and that's not always the best thing. And the best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. Thanks for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked on Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man. I'm still locked out of Twitter, so I'm going to be using @LockedOnAZCards more and more. It's unfortunate, but hopefully it'll turn around here soon. But yeah, please go to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Sometimes it's easier just to watch than to listen. If you'd like, go leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you listen to your podcast. I really appreciate it. For those who don't know, everydayers know this by saying I've got some, Ravens fans and Rams fans, 49ers fans that are pissed off at me for saying something not positive about their team. Heaven forbid, they kind of jettison my rating. So if you want to leave a 5-star review for me, get that boosted back up, I'd appreciate it. But I'm just happy that you're here. So the NFLPA team grades for 2024 are out. Before I drop the graphic, I want to remind you of what the 2023 grades are. Now, there's a new category this year that benefited the Arizona Cardinals, but the key categories from 2023 were treatment of families, food service/nutrition, weight room, strength coaches, training room, training staff, locker room, and team travel. Okay. The Cardinals scored an F or F- with treatment of families, food service/nutrition, weight room, training room, and locker room. Okay. So pretty important things. And all, the cosmetic nature of weight room, training room, and locker room just shows that Michael Biddle didn't want to put any money into the damn facilities. Okay. So not great last year. And that was not great, obviously. Last offseason was not a good one for Michael Bidwell. So the grades this year just popped up on YouTube. Another reason for you to go subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see the grades. The treatment of families went from an F to a D+. Okay. And while that's that's a grade and a half up, that's still not good. Last year, the Cardinals were tied for 29, so tied for last. This year, a D+ puts him at 19th. So it's right in the middle. Treatment of families, it's a difficult one. It's a nuanced one, but it's still not ideal, but a bump up from last year. Food/cafeteria. They were F- last year, and they're at a D this year. The Cardinals stopped charging the players for dinner. Yippee! Incremental changes. Okay, locker room still an F. Training room, a C-, up from an F. Up from an F-. I apologize. Weight room, C-, up from F-. Ownership is an F, and he rated a 5.8 out of 10 because of his unwillingness to just dump money into facilities. Which, listen, the reason why this is like the personification of the Arizona Cardinals in 2023 is it's a transitional year. It's like, okay, you need to start somewhere. You're not going to go from 5 F/F- to all A's. Ain't gonna happen. And just for comparison purposes, the Kansas City Chiefs owner got an F-. Okay, and they just won the Super Bowl. So do this as you wish. And this probably has a lot more weight in it than it should, but it shows the Arizona Cardinals' incremental change and growth. A lot of this rests solely on the shoulders of Michael Bidwell, obviously. So he's obviously been a penny pincher for ever. Paying Kyler Murray obviously was his first huge, massive shift, aside from giving Larry Fitzgerald too much money the last 3 years that he was here. It shows the incremental growth of the Arizona Cardinals. And some might say, oh, you're just looking at this way too positively. This just shows what a poverty franchise this is, and this just shows all of these things. It's a reminder of how bad it's been from a player perspective, for a long time. And it didn't get worse. And every day, you'll know this if you're first listening to Locked On Cardinals. Thank you, first off. One of my favorite things to say when really putting into perspective growth, even growth at a snail's pace for the Arizona Cardinals, if it's not a step backwards, it's a step forwards. If they're not shooting themselves in the foot, it's a step forward. And this is a step forward. It is. Yes, they need to dump money to the locker room and the training room, etc. Yeah, the locker room is, I've been in the locker room, boatload of times. Locker room is prehistoric. There are so many more college locker rooms that are eons ahead of the Arizona Cardinals locker room. And it's something that needs to be addressed. And the Arizona Cardinals, the grades show that things are slowly starting to move forward. And if you want to just see this as me sugarcoating something that can't be sugarcoated and you can't win with Michael Bidwell as the owner, that's fine. But the thing is, Michael Bidwell is not going anywhere. So learning to adapt and circumvent specific things is going to be necessary in an effort to see the big picture for the Cardinals and their ability to win in the future. I'm still a firm believer that the owner of an organization only has so much weight as pertaining to actual wins and losses. Sure. Who they sign, how much money they pay, obviously. Yes, all of that. I get all that. But if the locker room is from, it should have been updated 20 years ago, and the Cardinals are winning, it's not as big of a deal as the Cardinals winning 3 games and the locker rooms being bad. This is going to be a process. This continues to be a process. And after this offseason and draft, we're going to get a much clearer indication on what Michael Bidwell looks like as an owner and where the Cardinals are position-wise to be able to boost these grades up. And this isn't just for players who are currently on the roster. I can't make this clear enough. Every day, the Cardinals continue to do things differently. They're auditioning for free agents across the NFL who see everything, who may be looking for their next employer. And the Cardinals need to put themselves in the best position to welcome those free agents who want to come play here, not just for that ballooned paycheck, but because they truly want to be a part of building the Arizona Cardinals up from scratch, which is, where it started right after Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim got fired. Irrespective of the owner, if Monti Ossenfort, Jonathan Gannon, Kyler Murray, etc., do their job, free agents will want to come here. And that is the biggest takeaway from this grading. Is Jonathan Gannon got an A-. I know a lot of you don't believe in him still. I don't know why. Sure, there's been no pressure. There's been no expectation. There'll be expectations this year. It could have been so much worse than it was last year. People look at the win-loss record, look at the final scores, and don't watch how exciting it was last year for a large portion of the season with the Cardinals being in so many more games than they should have been. It's leadership. It's Jonathan Gannon. The facilities will get upgraded. These grades will continue to go up. But looking at these grades from this year to last year, regardless of the importance of these grades, it shows incremental growth, just like we saw the Arizona Cardinals on and off the field last season. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Mel Kiper's got a new mock draft out. It's always fun. Let's discuss it next. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. Patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button. Turn notifications on. Leave a like, comment. I appreciate everybody who's here, everydayers. Thank you. If this is your first listen, thank you. I'm forever grateful that I'm able to do this, even though I've, officially left the sports radio world a couple years ago after being there for 12 years. This is the best radio / podcast job I've ever had. So, and it's only going to get better with the Arizona Cardinals this offseason. So, Monti Ossenfort, Jonathan Gannon, they nailed their presser. While it seems, elementary and obvious for other organizations. Yeah, their GM and head coach didn't say anything stupid. Cool. These little things continue to build trust just everywhere in the leadership and intelligence and direction that Monti Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon have. The grades weren't great for the Cardinals. Jonathan Gannon got an A-, which was glowing. But there was improvement from the 5 Fs, including 3 F- in 2023. Facilities aren't great. They didn't upgrade. Michael Bidwell got an F because of his unwillingness to upgrade. But listen, it's coming. Okay, you're not going to be able to completely overturn a dysfunctional franchise in one offseason through one season. So the incremental growth in the grades is kind of the personification of what we witnessed last year on the field. Incremental growth, stability, cohesion, onward and upward to where there are going to be actual expectations in 2024. Mel Kiper had his new mock draft out. Of course, we're going to discuss this. The OG had Marvin Harrison Jr. going 4th. Caleb Williams 1st, Jaden Daniels 2nd, Drake May 3rd, Marvin Harrison Jr. 4th. Malik Neighbors dropped to 9th in this draft. And, 27 is kind of the one. So 4, it's like 4 is going to be a lot more uncertain. Obviously, we have no idea what 1, 2, 3 is going to be. We still don't. Leaning towards Caleb Williams at 1 is like a lock. The Falcons are looked to be the odds-on favorite to get Justin Fields by a new report that came out this morning. Who the hell knows, man? Drake May is getting holes poked in his game by many. He may not be a top 3 guy. Jane Daniels, we have no idea. Like, just because there are 3 or 4 or 5 quarterback names now every draft doesn't mean these guys are going to be like it's going to turn into like the wide receiver position where it's like they're going to draft a whole bunch of guys and like 3 are going to be good, 6 are going to be not great, and it really depends on the situation they're put in when they get drafted. So we'll see. But Mel Kiper had, quarterback. Cardinals taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. At 27, new name, Darius Robinson, interior defensive lineman. I watched some film on him. Defensive lineman out of Missouri. Big dude, fleet of foot, front 7. It would make sense. Like, I talked a lot about can you hear me? I talked a lot about doesn't matter who the Cardinals draft, what position they draft. As long as it's not running back in the first round or quarterback, and probably safety, it would make sense. So you go wide receiver, you go offensive lineman at 27, you go defensive lineman at 27, you go corner at 27, you go wide receiver at 27. Like, if they were to draft 2 wide receivers in the first round, it's like, okay. I mean, that's the direction you want to go. You sign a couple offensive linemen during the offseason, sign a couple pass rushers. Okay. Still have 4 picks in the top 100. Like, there's legitimately 0 combination at 4 and 27 that would be a bad combination for this roster that's so devoid of talent, unless it was a quarterback or a running back in one of those positions or safety. So while that's incredibly freeing, it's also terrifying. It's like, well, pick the right one. A lot of it's going to be cleared up through free agency, depending on what they do. They're obviously going to spend more money than they did last offseason. It could be just a bunch of Kazir White signings at different positions. Solid guys, not breaking the bank, and filling out the roster. Like, the pick at 27, defensive, this is the first mock where I believe they have a defensive lineman going at 27. But I think all of this is going to be predicated upon what they do at 4. I think that's pretty obvious. That's going to determine everything. Because if they draft, say they trade back 2 spots and then draft Olufashinu, who's skyrocketed back up draft boards. Joe Alt seems to be the guy, okay? And this was the question I posed to you 6 weeks ago. Who has a wider gap? Which position has a wider gap between 1 and the next tier? Offensive line or wide receiver? And undoubtedly, initially, everybody's like, oh, Marvin Harrison Jr. is number 1, and then it's everybody else. And then Joe Alt, Olufashinu, it's them, and they're grouped in with a bunch of others. It's funny how things happen over time where that's completely flipped. Now people are saying, oh, Malik Neighbors is probably the number 1 guy, and then Joe Alt is, no doubt about it, the number 1 tackle in this draft. I told you. But number 4 will predicate everything. Because, so say they end up getting offered, who the hell knows, man? Say a team wants to move up. Say Tennessee wants to move up and draft, I don't know, Marvin Harrison Jr. Just hypothetically speaking. Say they want to move up or the Cardinals want to trade back after Marvin Harrison Jr. goes 3. Okay, and they could draft Joe Alt at 6 or 7. Then wide receiver comes into play at 27. Then trading back comes into play at 27. Then trading back up comes into play at 27. Everything is predicated upon what they do it for or what they don't do it for. But with Mel Kiper, the OG of all of this, he has the Cardinals taking defensive lineman. Fine. Cool. book it. Wide receiver 1 for the future. Bolster this defensive line. I'd be shocked if they didn't bring in 1, if not 2 defensive linemen this offseason to be able to plug and play right away. It's going to be fascinating. Yeah, man, this has been fun. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Remember, without you, there is no me. I will talk to you tomorrow.